a lot of success is based on a ton of failure. Okay. So like you got to be okay with failing.
Hey guys, this is Russ and Ryan. We're down here at Starland Ballroom, freezing ourselves to death. We just had the opportunity to interview Jerry Cantrell. Awesome opportunity to talk about songwriting, production, his guitar playing, and so much more. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey, Jerry, appreciate joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
As you're kicking this tour off, I mean, people look at you, they see Jerry the guitarist, they see Jerry the songwriter, in so many different roles. But I mean, you have a really heavy hand in terms of like your involvement with the album recording process all the way through.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And, you know, it reminds me a little bit of Jimmy Page in the sense of like, you know, he always wanted to be involved, seeing it through, right?
He's one of my heroes. He's one of my heroes. I mean, you've got to be involved every step of the way, and that's part of the fun of it. Is it's a multitask kind of discipline and stuff, and multi-medium as well. You know, artwork, making film videos, cool merch stuff, all of that. A campaign, producing, writing. There's a lot of hats to wear. So, you know, I only really know one way to do it, and there wasn't a rule book when I got it. So, I kind of went off the playbook of guys like Jimmy Page and other artists like that who kind of used I remember Bruce Springsteen talking about that too, about they were a great live band, but they didn't feel like they had captured themselves in the studio for a few records, and learning how to use the studio as an instrument itself. You know, that kind of struck a chord with me as well. So, it's fun being able to mess around at different levels of stuff, and you got to have your hand, on the wheel, otherwise it's not going to be your thing when it comes out the other side. So, I like to be involved in every step of the process.
Did you do that from like out of the gate, from the get-go, or did it kind of increase with every passing album?
Yeah, we got really lucky. Number one, just the band that I'm a part of, we had a pretty strong idea of what we were, what we sounded like. We didn't really need a whole lot of direction in that. We didn't know anything about the record business, but we knew how to make good rock, and we didn't really need anybody telling us how to do that. So from the get-go, we worked with really great producers who understood that, like Dave Jordan and
Nick Resculinix later on.
Yeah, and I learned a lot from all of the producers that we worked with, and they're all very similar. They're like, I don't really want to fuck with you. It's like if I can't make you sound good, then I don't need to have this job. Like, you guys sound great. I just capture what you're doing. Now, of course, they have a lot of great ideas and a lot of input, and not taken away from their involvement at all. But we all had a strong identity, and so I guess we started there, and we had some success with that. And so after that, nobody really could say nobody could really say anything after that, and thankfully that's left a lot of room to really be free, to kind of do it the way that you want to do it, and also kind of figure out who you are and what you're dealing with. And luckily we were pretty in focus from the get-go. That first record's pretty in focus. I'd say we were about 90% there. And that's a lot of bands' first records, you're not there yet, you know what I mean? So like we got really lucky there that we'd spent some time in the clubs for a couple of years and done a lot of shows and worked on some material, discarded a bunch of material, came up with some new stuff, and that's what you got with Facelift, and then we kind of marched forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, out of the gate, Facelift is still a classic for a reason, and it's funny because when you talk about different producers, I'm thinking of like a Jeff Lynne, or someone who puts his stamp on everything and he makes it sound like ELO. Whereas you guys were almost irrespective of the producer. There is an Alice in Chains sound, there's a Jerry Cantrell sound, and so many other bands cop to that. It was almost like they got producers to make them sound like you. You guys were fully formed almost. It didn't matter who was in the booth, it was you guys.
Well, I mean, that's the goal, right? So like you grew up with, you know who ELO is, you know it's Hendrix, it's Van Halen from the first note, it's AC/DC. That's what you want to be. You don't want to be them, but you want that sort of an identity, that recognizable identity. So if you're lucky enough to be able to create one of those, and really what that takes is is just the chemistry between the band members, right? It's like, it's all right here. You know, we could talk gear all day long. And of course, gear does influence some things, you know, guitars sound a certain way, effects, amps, you know, that's true to a degree, but it's really in the flesh, man. It's just, it's the sound that you all create together. So, but that's the goal. You're hoping to have that, and I think we found that pretty early on, and you know, it's a pretty satisfying thing to know that you can always count on that. One thing that's really great about it is it really frees you up to kind of do whatever the hell you want to do, because you know you're going to sound like you. If you try to play a country song or a blues or whatever, it's still going to be you. It just opens up a lot of room for you to play with a lot of things, and I think in Alice we did that as well. I mean, our second record was an acoustic EP.
I was going to ask.
And then we did Dirt, and then we did Jar of Flies, another acoustic EP. So we went all over the place. We took some chances. It still sounds like us. And we were also interested in not having to be one type of band. You know, like, okay, we've been called what? Hard rock, alternative, grunge, metal alternative. We've been called a bunch of stuff. Was it the Billy Joel, you know, lyric, you know, it's all rock and roll to me. So like,
but I remember,
we're a rock band. You
back
know,
then, you know, for us, I mean, growing up on your music and all of that, I remember thinking, this is a new band. I mean, you guys were new in 1990, and then you're like, we're putting out an acoustic EP. And it was like, I thought, like, that's ballsy.
Yeah.
And it was still you guys. It was nothing, it's not like you went, we're going soft. It was still dark. It was still, the songs were great. I think that's really what it came down to.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if you were cranking up or just strumming an acoustic guitar. The vocals were there. The feel of what Alice in Chains was there. How do you develop that? How did you stumble upon knowing this is who we are, this is our sound, almost regardless of what instruments we're using?
I think if there's any one thing, and I you know, it was definitely cultivated in Alice, and I take it with me when I'm working outside the band, and I think all of the members do. You know, it's an ethos of like, you don't have to make. I'm not trying to recreate Facelift. I'm not trying to recreate Dirt or the acoustic EPs, Sap and Jar of Flies. They're done, and they're done as the best they could be done. It's what's next. What can you do now? And we have never, as a band, and I never, when I'm working outside the band, I never go into a creative process, the starting of writing what's going to turn out to be a record with something God, I'm stumbling and fumbling all over the place. But I never go in with a hard idea of like, okay, I'm going to make this kind of record. Okay, I'm going to make a heavy record. I'm going to make an acoustic record. I don't do that. You just get in motion. You start writing. You start putting things together, and you know there'll be a kind of a slate of a lot of different feels. But at some point in the writing process, and it usually happens pretty soon, the material will you start writing more of this kind of material. And so, okay, it wants to go this way. You just follow it, you know. It's really freeing, and it's natural that way. And you just kind of, you kind of tend the music. You feel like, rather than, you know, kind of trying to manage it or something like that, you're just kind of trying to tend it and follow it and help it get where it wants to go, I guess.
So when you're producing these albums as well, I've heard in interviews that I've read that to some degree, say equated to in a movie, you enjoy movies, or movie buff from what I understand, and that there's even been maybe some indirect influences that you take
a lot,
from, right?
Books too, authors as well. I'm definitely influenced by stuff.
Is there any that comes to mind from an example?
Even physical art, you know, like painting, and you know, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. You know, I was a big Stephen King fan when I was a kid. There's definitely some stuff there. You know, a lot of the filmmakers, that I've been a fan of, Oliver Stone and, Scorsese, the Coen brothers, Anderson. I mean, there's a long list of people that that I'm a fan of. Tarantino, I'm a big Tarantino fan. And,
Cameron Crowe, I would hope.
Yeah, of course, of course,
Yeah.
of course, Cameron Crowe.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, sure. I mean, on this record in particular, I'll give you an example. There's a song called "Off the Rails," actually, and it was about a verse. I got the first verse, and I think I got the chorus, and then I started to get into the second verse, and I just got writer's block. I couldn't, it was a really strong verse, and I just couldn't figure out where to go next, and I went and saw Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese film,
Great movie.
and there was a scene where I guess the ranch hands are like kind of burning the fields and stuff like that, and I don't know, that image is kind of like, oh my God, okay, there it is, right? So like it just kind of broke me out of the writer's block. Now the song doesn't have anything to do with Killers of the Flower Moon, but Scorsese broke me out of that imagery, and that storytelling broke me out of my writer's block. So like that happens all the time. Yeah.
See, that makes a lot of sense though, because I mean, I think it's fair to say you're pretty prolific since over the last 35 years, and it's different stuff, but it still sounds like, whether you're doing a solo album or anything else, it's all there. But it sounds to me like you're smart enough to just get out of the way and allow something to influence you. You're not going to force it or overcook it. Like if a song's not ready yet, you're just not going to push it. And so whether it's art, film, take a walk, your dog, whatever, it somehow informs the end result in what you're doing on a record. But I think some people try way hard and they push it out there, and it almost blocks being prolific.
Well, I mean, it's, I referenced it earlier in the interview, like there isn't a rule book. So like you really, where do you learn how to do any art or any discipline, from the people who did it before, like, people that you're a fan of, or like that really inspired you. Like, wish I could have wrote that song
every day
in that band, or like, and you still listen to this stuff. So, and they were just trying to figure it out too. They were making it up as they went along too. So that's really the key. If you've got some sort of a, I don't know, like a hunger or a desire to do something in life, you just got to get into motion and figure it out. And a lot of success is based on a ton of failure. Okay. So like, you got to be okay with failing. So it's all right. You embarrass yourself, you up, okay, I didn't do that good. Let me try it again. It requires that. It's like I always equate it to, I think one of the most fearless things in the world is a stand-up comic, right? It's there is nothing. It's just them. It's you and a mic and a crowd, and that's it. There's no guitar to hide behind, no effects. You've got a band playing with you to kind of meld into. It's like, it's fearless, but that's a great example of like, the only way you get good is getting up there and bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing until you can tweak it a little bit, and like, okay, I got a few laughs here. You just kind of keep at it. That's a real good analogy for the way that I kind of go about things, man. You got to embrace failure. I heard Neil Young say that.
Yeah, fail upwards.
Embrace it. Embrace it. Embrace it.
But that takes a lot of guts, a lot of fortitude to do that.
Well, you're taking a chance. You're taking chances
every time,
right? So like, put your chips on the table, push them in there, roll the dice. And what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out, or you can't do it. But you know what? You tried. And so it was an adventure. It was kind of a cool thing. Most of the time, if you do that enough, though, I found that you can get there. Might not be in the way that you thought you were going to get there.
That's it too. It's like,
might not be the way that you thought you were going to get there, but you get there.
Right.
Can I ask you though? Do you feel from that mindset?
Yeah.
Do you feel that it is more or less an extreme from when you first started, or even now? From established, and maybe it's just different.
Well, I think there's, I don't know. I guess I look at it in two different ways. You would think, and I think that maybe I'm a little bit more confident now because I've been doing it for so long. But then again, I think I question myself a little bit more now that I'm older too, than I used to when I was younger. Just it, like,
okay.
You know what I mean? So like, so maybe I don't have as much it as I used to have, and maybe, but maybe I have more questions and think things through when I say it or interact with people or whatever I do than when I was a kid. And there's a real beauty in that. And then this is a different stage of life, but every discipline or being good at something or whatever it's just earned. It's just hard work. It's a shit ton of luck. It's a nice chunk of luck, but really what it is just hard work. And if you've got you're the particular kind of nut, like I am, and God bless me and all the fucking weirdos that do this because the world needs you. You know what I mean? The world needs you to be doing what you're doing, but you got to have a real fucking kind of love for this thing, and just a desire beyond any sort of like, fulfillment or payment or any of that shit. It's just got to be something that you have to do. I have to do this. I never really thought of doing anything else in my life,
right.
And I'm glad that I had that kind of good attitude when I was fucking young. Like, I'm doing this,
right.
my mom and dad, like, we got to have something to fall back on. You should go to college. It's just in case this doesn't work out. I'm not falling back, that was my attitude. And I mean, luckily it worked out.
Well, and you were lucky to have the talent to do it. And I'm not blowing smoke. The point being, the reason I say that, we're not just talking to you as somebody from someplace. Like, I'm a genuine fan, and I would be hard pressed to say, if I was going to talk about Jerry Cantrell, is he a songwriter? Is he a great guitar player? Is he a great singer? All of those are so identifiable. When I hear you play a riff, I'm like, there's no question who that is. When I hear your voice, I'm like, even after Lane passed and you guys continued, I'm like, it still sounds like all those vocals that
I'm still my part of that puzzle.
Right. But point being, like, how do you do that? Some people just go, look, I'm a guitar player. I can be known for that. You're just as famous for being a great singer.
Yeah.
And so how did that part come out? Like, where some guys could just say, I'll write the songs, I'll play guitar, I'll let someone else sing.
Well, that's how I started out. I mean, I got Lane standing next to Lane Staley. I don't really need to be singing too much. I mean, that guy's pretty badass, so I was very happy just to be a songwriter and pipe up on some backups once in a while. But he gave me some encouragement early on, like, you write a lot of this shit. And like, I love this stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm what I'm saying to you, because I love it and I love singing it. But it's, a lot of this stuff's really personal to you. So you should sing a few of these, And I'm like, I don't want to. Come on, you got it. And he's like, no, really, you should sing a few. So I did. I started doing stuff on like the acoustic EP and on SAP. I think that was the first time I took a lead, and then I just kind of built from there and kept doing more and more and more. And then, when Lane passed, it was more of of course, we welcomed William in, and that blueprint needs to be maintained of a two lead vocal system that we had in Alice. It's kind of identifiable, that Lane and I created with Sean and Mike. And, but I had to step up a lot more.
A little heavy lifting.
I'm like a lot of guys, and like Lane, for example, or Cornell, or there's a shit ton of guys that didn't start off wanting to be singers. Like, both those guys were drummers,
right?
You know what I mean? And like, nobody else could sing. Like, okay, all right, I'll be the singer. They didn't start off wanting to be a singer. I didn't start off wanting to be a singer either. But by necessity, that's just what happened. And I like to think that I've gotten better at it, and I feel more confident in each record, especially this new one in particular. I think I've gotten into some territory that I haven't never reached before. Some more power, some more control, a little bit more range, a little more edge. I Want Blood is a very demanding record vocally, and that's kind of satisfying, because you're still pushing yourself. You're still putting yourself in an uncomfortable place that you don't know if you can pull it off. That's exactly where you want to be when you're creating. I don't know if I can do this. That's where you're gonna make some good doing that. Yeah.
So be remiss if we didn't touch upon a little bit of that gear too. We were talking about earlier. You had mentioned that, like, gear, it plays its part, right?
Yeah,
but to me, the way that I'm seeing this, and even hearing you say it now, is that you had a confidence within your musical career, your songwriting, what you wanted to do, your sound. It almost sounds to me as though that kind of correlated similarly to your guitar sound, right? So there was a sound that you had in your head that you continued to make yours and grow it, and Les Pauls were a part of that. G&Ls were a part of that. And even like the D-Trip is an example, or the Wino. I mean, you have a pretty rich history with Gibson as an example.
I do.
That goes back to get the sound that you like so much.
Yeah, well, that's the. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that part of the equation. So gear is important, and Angus Young plays a SG, and Jimmy Page plays a Les Paul. You know what I mean? And that's part of the thing. So I play a G&L Rampage. That's where I started off, and also I added a Les Paul to that kind of combo. interestingly enough, when Leo made the G&L Rampage, he was trying to compete with Eddie Van Halen Frankenstein, basically. So it's kind of like a cheap knockoff version of that. But he also wanted a Strat that had a little bit more of a darker, kind of harder sound that you would get out of a Les Paul. So the G&L was designed to be a Strat that kind of played like a Frankenstein Strat, but had some of the tonality of a Les Paul. So, and I always was a big fan of Les Pauls too. Couldn't afford one though. G&Ls were about $600 and Les Pauls were quite a bit more expensive and still are than a G&L. So, so it took me a few more years to be able to acquire one of those. But when I did, that came right in the mix too. So it's really a combo of those two guitars, the G&L and the Gibson Les Paul.
Which was the first
that's
Paul
kind
in
of,
particular?
That's kind of my particular favorites of tone blending.
Got it.
And then, I was working I was 19 years old. I'd quit college, to, go jam with a band and move to Texas. And, we got a job doing asbestos abatement and, that kind of sucked. So I met some other guys that I was jamming with and their dad, worked at a music store called Arnold and Morgan Music, Company, Arnold Morgan Music Company. And it was in, I think it was in Garland, Texas, just outside of Dallas. And so I worked there, and that's where I discovered the Rampage. And when I picked that thing up, it just felt perfect and right in my hands. And so, we met each other then, and that's been my tried and true for 39 years. So I bought both of those first two guitars there when I was 19. And, those two things are magical. Those two guitars are magical. And then, in the early 90s, I got, a grip of, Les Pauls from Gibson. One was the Wino, one was the D-Trip,
right.
With all the burns on it, and a black one and also a Trans Blue 4. So I still have all of those as well.
That's amazing. And I think both of those guitars, being as different as they are, I think they also influence that. I know you got to run, but I have to ask you, how do you write a riff with all those microtonal kind of, like, there's almost a seasick feeling to the riffs that you write. And I feel like the G&L was a perfect guitar for that because it has the Kahler on it. I almost feel like if you're bending a note slightly, it's giving a little bit more. Like,
sure.
Whereas a Gibson is much more direct and the impact is, it's stiff and solid. Like, you bend a note, you have to bend it. Whereas I feel like it somehow informs some of the riffs that you wrote. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if I'm thinking back, I don't think, I think Check My Brain was probably one of the most seasick riffs I've ever written. Yeah. Now, I may not be correct on this, but I want to say that I think that is a Les Paul.
Is it? Okay.
That's a Les Paul on the first note bend. So you're starting into the bend, into the bend, going down, up on the second, and then back down to the first. So, because the G&L has a bit of a floating bridge, right? So when you're doing bending, that thing kind of works, kind of works around a little bit, and you can get even a little bit too out of tune. So I'm pretty sure that's a Les Paul.
But I'm even thinking like, it ain't like that, or something. Yeah. Even some of the early stuff where those bends are like, whoa, and it's like, I don't know. It was just very identifiable.
Well, I love guys who use vibrato and bend notes. So like, Tony Iommi, Ace Frehley, like the vibrato on those guys. I'm like, I've always liked that stuff and like bending into stuff and bending out of stuff and a little bit of uncomfortable feeling with something, but it's been a blueprint from the beginning, and it seems like I come up with a few riffs like that. But there's a connection to other guys who did it before me for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you have the credit. You take it. Well, don't worry about
maybe for this generation.
Absolutely. I mean, we know you got. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
No, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
take care, man. Have a great night.
Thanks for giving me a minute to settle in too.
Of course,
no, for
man.
sure.
Yeah. Cool.
Obviously, we want to send out a huge thanks to Jerry Cantrell for taking the time to talk to us today. And of course, our friends at Gibson Guitars for making it possible. If you want to check out all the Gibson guitars that we carry, be sure to check us out at AmericanMusical.com. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe.